Let's have a look at the roundup of the French papers. Dipty is with us here on set. You're going to start with those senatorial elections that we were mentioning, taking place here in France this weekend.
That's right. It's worth mentioning that these are elections by indirect suffrage, which means only elected officials can vote, but they're important. They were important nonetheless, if not for the fact that the big winners really were the right. Emmanuel Macron's party only got 28 out of the 341 seats in the Senate, and for the communist paper L'Humanité, it's proof that electors wanted to impose their first sanctions on Macron, a warning perhaps against his labor reforms and a whole host of other changes that he's pushing through to shake up traditional French society. Worth mentioning also that the French socialists picked up 72 to 79 seats, a pretty good result for them. Now, Le Figaro, the right-leaning paper, says the Senate has, quote, escaped the Macronist wave that took over the National Assembly in legislative elections back in June. A parliamentary representative for Macron's party has said, however, basically she's justified the, quote, justified the results, saying, I quote, between winning the Senate and transforming the country, we have made a political choice. Maybe so, but in any case, Macron's critics are trying to spin it a completely different way.
The other big news in France today is lawmakers are set to discuss for the second time now the new anti-terrorism and national security bill, one that's pretty controversial here, isn't it?
It's pretty controversial, especially in a society like France that cherishes its personal freedoms and human rights, because Emmanuel Macron essentially wants to enshrine into law parts of the state of emergency that's due to expire soon. Libération, the left-leaning paper, is a big critic of these reforms, calling them a step to the right and expressing their concern over reforms that would, I quote, institutionalize infringements of personal freedoms. The French left parties in general and human rights activists are very much against this. One human rights activist who you see on the front page of Libération, Henri Leclerc, he's actually a guest editor for the paper today. He calls Macron's national security reforms a law of suspects. In other words, everybody will be a suspect under these new reforms until proven otherwise.
Well, the government's responded to these criticisms, though, hasn't it?
Gérard Collomb, who's the interior minister here in France, has responded in the street paper 20 Minutes, essentially justifying Emmanuel Macron's anti-terrorism reforms. He says they aim to pull France out of the state of emergency and will only aim to prevent terrorist attacks. He tells the paper that this is not at all about threats to public order, because of course one of the main concerns with these reforms is that it could affect the way people protest or demonstrate, as we're seeing even happening right now against the labor reforms. Collomb assures electors that things like house arrest will only be used against people with links to terrorism.
Now to German elections. Of course, we're going to cover this in great detail in international papers in a couple of hours' time. But let's have a look at the French papers, what the French papers are saying.
Well, no cheeky cartoon from L'Opinion, unfortunately, this morning. I was expecting something cheeky, but no, just this rather subdued photo of Angela Merkel on its front page. Also, interestingly, the paper's front page, this headline really is, what are the hard lessons that Macron will take away from these German elections? Because despite, the paper says, despite a good economic situation and relatively low unemployment, the far right in Germany has entered parliament for the first time. So these lessons will definitely, Emmanuel Macron will definitely be taking some lessons away from this. Le Figaro calls it quite simply a bitter victory. This is really a word we're seeing across the press this morning. There's now a shadow hanging over the German chancellor as she enters her fourth term, possibly her last term as chancellor.
And we're going to end on something a little bit different, something that's sure to please drone fans. We're going up there to a new drone bar, which is opening in the French city of Rennes.
That's right. France is not immune to a bar of some sort. These kind of themed cafes seem to be taking over the world. At least in France, you have the cheese bar, the omelette bar, the cat bar.
The cat bar, yeah.
I don't think they have a gin and tonic bar. I'm very interested in that one, by the way. Well, now you can, at least the next edition is the drone bar. That's what 20 Minutes tells us. It's not really about flying drones, so at least not from what 20 Minutes explains. It's more about sharing. So it's a hangar space that two young entrepreneurs are using. Basically, you go in and you can don AR, augmented reality glasses, and experience the flight path of a drone through the little camera that's on the top. Yeah. The two owners, who are tech geeks, say people will also be able to come in and repair their drones and, of course, buy some new drones if they so desire.
I was wondering how high it was, this bar. A bar with a very high ceiling. Okay, that explains it. Thanks to Laurent Ware with the French papers.